guys, before we dive in, we've been talking this month about emotional flashbacks, which is a huge, huge important topic when it comes to healing from any type of trauma. But before we dive in, let's just kind of do a check-in and see how everyone is showing up today. Take a second to notice what you're noticing in your body, what you're noticing in your mind, what emotional state you're in, whatever is like the first thing you notice as you kind of check in with yourself. Let me know in the chat box what you are kind of noticing. We have nervous, anxious, proud, grounded, a little anxious, tired yet eager, mind upbeat, body stiff, overloaded, tired, partially here, stressed out. Okay, so important to get these check-ins in the beginning. It really helps me to see like the energy of kind of how everyone is showing up and just kind of noticing the activation that's already there. Yesterday in our yearly members only meeting, we talked about capacity and I compared it to a cup that's full. When my cup is full, I don't have any space to add anything, right? So sometimes when we have a lot of activation, our body, our cup, our container is already full. And the last thing we want to do is try to put more in. So that's why it's always great to start with first a check-in and then supporting the body. Because when we support the body, we're kind of helping pour a little bit out so that we can have more capacity. Does that make sense? I think our tendency, I don't know about you guys, yes or no, if this resonates. I know with myself, I never at one time knew anything about capacity. And so I was just shoving myself forward. Didn't matter how full I was. More, I got to shove myself, I got to force myself. And it only made things worse. So these check-ins and this support for the body is what helps us to not go there. So yeah, you guys get it. So if you've been doing that, yeah, it's something that until we understand how to work with our body, it's something that we do. But let's change that. Let's take a minute to help our body's capacity. If you have a pillow, pillows are one of my favorite resources that is so helpful. And if you can even have your back against the chair and a pillow in front of you, 1 or 2 words in the chat box with what you're noticing as you supported your body for even just 2 minutes. It says a little release, more present, relaxed. Everything is so pretty, energy and grounded, relaxed, more present and grounded. Relax. Isn't that awesome that we can notice that in our body, right? When our activation is up here or we're shut down, we don't have to try to force ourselves. We just have to give a little bit of support to the body. And says, I sense how much tension there is in my body. I didn't realize this before. And yes, we will get glimpses of what is there when we're more present with it. Okay, anxiety going away. Body love supports me and calms activation and tension. Really notice that. How beautiful, right? Okay, awesome. The first thing I wanted to mention was the reality that there's a difference between managing flashbacks, emotional flashbacks, and healing emotional flashbacks. And the truth is that we have to learn how to do both, right? The managing comes first because when we're in an emotional flashback, there's the biology of trauma in our body. And so if I can't be with this, so what happens is the body remembers something from the past. Something in my present is reminding my body of the past and all of the emotions, all of the beliefs, all the stories that are there. And that sends my body into the biology of trauma, where now I have adrenaline in my body, stress hormones. My heart rate has changed. All of that is taking place on a biological level, right? And then if I can't be with that, if I can't handle that charge that comes up, my body, my mind sees that and is like, danger, fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And now if I'm in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, I'm not with this that's here and I can't work through it. So we have to first manage it. We do have to work on the symptoms. We do have to, of the biology of trauma, we do have to do those somatic exercises, but we just don't want to stop there. Then we have to go in and heal, which if you want to know what healing emotional flashbacks is, something that Alan brought up. Alan says, I'm noticing patterns. Emotional flashbacks are patterns due to overcouplings in our nervous system. There are 2 things that got linked together. And because they're together, we keep repeating certain things or experiencing the same emotional states. So healing is the uncoupling. So we're going to learn how to do both. And then just remember, overcouplings do not happen overnight. They are locked in our nervous system due to repetition plus emotion. So uncoupling them is not an overnight process. We learn how to do it and then we rinse and repeat. We keep practicing. And then what we start noticing is what I talked about last week. Our emotional flashbacks don't go away overnight. They start changing in intensity and length. So maybe they flung me into a 10 and now they're only like a 7. Maybe I was stuck in a flashback for a week and now it's one day. And we start noticing that decrease until we can work with it in real time, and then till we can rewire the story. Once the story is rewired and the overcoupling is broken, our body's not going to have those same reactions. Just like Pavlov's dogs, right? Everyone knows the conditioned behavior of Pavlov's dogs. You ring the bell, you give them food. So what would happen? The dogs would salivate at the sound of a bell. Did that mean they were weak because they salivated? No, they had no conscious control over it. It became a subconscious pattern. So what they did was, after that pattern was established, they began ringing the bell and not giving them food. Over time, the dog stopped salivating at the sound of the bell. So that's the healing work, the breaking the overcouplings that we go through as well. So I just wanted to throw that out there. When it comes to working through emotional flashbacks, I don't believe in reinventing the wheel. Pete Walker has a great list of managing emotional flashbacks. I'm actually going to put the link to his PDF. I think it's right from his website. Let me see if I can copy this. For anyone that, in case you have never read the book, From Surviving to Thriving by Pete Walker, where he talks about it, but I'll leave it here. I don't go through that whole list because we're all different. When it comes to me, the 13 steps were too much for me. I picked 3 that worked well for my body and my nervous system. And once I got like a system on how I can start working with them, that's how I started. So I encourage you to, not now, but download that list. And when you get a chance, see which ones feel right for you. Okay. Because we're all different. But I did want to mention a couple of key things that are on that list that are helpful. And I want to explain why. His first step is to state, I'm having an emotional flashback. Now, the reason why just saying that, and something that I found helpful, was using the words I might, because then the brain's like, oh, but are you? Are you really? Maybe, kind of what Anne was saying, right? So I found it helpful to say, I might be having an emotional flashback. I wonder. By stating that, it gives the brain a little bit of space between what's happening, and it starts putting a little bit of a timestamp on it. So for example, when we're in an emotional flashback, our body notices the same emotional state that you're feeling now attached to something from the past. So guess how you feel? You feel like a child, you feel small, you feel overwhelmed, incapable, because your body has just traveled back to a time when you were small. Somatic time travel, right? So when we say I'm having an emotional flashback, it kind of helps the brain to realize this is a then thing. Okay, so that's the value of that first step. The second thing that I found helpful, and I think it is number 2 on his list as well, is to remind yourself, I'm afraid, or I'm feeling fear, and the danger is not happening now. The reason this is important is because if we try to tell our body, I don't need to be scared, everything's fine, but the body feels fear, it's going to look at you like a liar. It's going to be like, I can't trust you. I feel fear. You're telling me that I'm not scared. So instead of that, we validate the emotion. And instead of saying, but I'm safe, instead of it being an either or, it's like, I'm feeling this fear, and we orient to our surroundings, and it's not happening now. So that's the second thing that I wanted to mention from his list. And then the third was self-compassion. So whenever we're having an emotional flashback, our harsh inner critic is like BFFs with emotional flashbacks. They tend to go like peanut butter and jelly. So if you're in an emotional flashback, you will start hearing your inner voice attacking you or someone else, right? Attacking you is your inner critic. Attacking someone else is the outer critic, but it can be like that, and it can come on strong. When you're in the middle of an emotional flashback, it's very difficult to try to reason with that critic. Sometimes something as simple as delete, just hearing it, delete, just pushing that off button for right now in the moment that you're having the flashback can be helpful. So those are just some things that I take from his list, but take your time on, going through that list and seeing which parts feel right for you. At the same time, something I did wrong on this recovery journey is I only would work on emotional flashback when I noticed one, right? So, it's emotional flashback. What do I do? Thankfully, after kind of running against a wall long enough, I realized, okay, I got to change things up. And what I realized was helpful was having a routine of exercises that helped create resilience in my nervous system so that in the moment that I needed them, it was second nature. Instead of only pulling them out of the bag in the worst case scenario, I started doing them so regularly that I still do some, even when I don't need to. And we'll talk about one of the ones that I do a lot that my daughter always calls me out for, but I will share that in a few minutes. But I want to mention a few that are specific to our trauma responses, and then I'm going to talk about generalized somatic exercises. So for example, if you're in freeze, for those that have been in the school, I've shared with you guys plenty of times how the car was used as a place where I was confined. And so I had to endure. And so that on top of the fact that I was in a very traumatic car accident when I was 16, my body in the car would just shut down. I would dissociate. When I was out of all toxic relationships, I could get in the car in the passenger seat and I wasn't there. When I got remarried, my husband would be like, "Where are you? Come back to me." Like he could tell, I was totally dissociated. That went away. But then one day I was driving and our nervous system, it'll just be, oh, but you're in the car. It'll notice a little bit of something and then it'll somatically time travel. I was driving 70 miles an hour on the highway, my 2 kids in the car, and my arms turned to lead. I was frozen behind the wheel. The scariest thing ever. Thankfully, I had just recently learned about different somatic exercises that were helpful, especially with freeze. And so I started humming. And as I was humming is activating the vagus nerve. It's telling your body you're safe. So for example, if you're being attacked by a ferocious animal, are you going to be humming? No, you're going to be focused. So when we're humming, it's a body up approach that instead of trying to convince my body I'm safe, because when my arms were led, no amount of I'm safe helped. But by provoking my body to feel the safety, sent the message to my brain. And then my arms came out of the freeze. Humming or singing, very good for if you get stuck in freeze. So for example, you're at work and you're walking down the hall, you start feeling the freeze come on, start humming really low. If people hear you, so what? Like, what are they going to think? Oh, she's happy. Who cares? Right? But that's the one that my daughter always calls me out for. Like, even if I'm in the shopping center or something, it became such a second nature for me to come out of freeze. I still do it. My daughter will be like, "Mom, you're humming." And I'm like, "It's habit now, can't change it. Feels good." So anyway, that's a good one for freeze. For those that don't know me, my name is Michele. I'm a trauma-informed coach. I'm a somatic experiencing practitioner, and I'm the founder of the School of Transformation, which is a monthly membership where I meet live on Zoom every week with survivors from all over the world, and we learn how to embody everything that I talk about on this channel. In other words, it's not enough to just have the information in your mind. We have to learn how to embody the healing journey, and that's what we do in the School of Transformation. So if this is a resource you think that might be helpful, make sure you check out the links above.